Hey guys, it's Rob the History Smith here with another video for you. I'm doing something a little bit different today, focusing more on militaria than the standard firearm stuff. And particularly I'm going to be talking about the controversial side of collecting. And maybe what we can do to be more sensitive and just be aware of what we're collecting and how we're displaying it. So what am I talking about when I say controversial side of collecting? I mean, if I were to show you something like this little thing here. No, it's not Mothra. But I believe it's some sort of moth. I don't know for sure. Show you something like that, you say, well, that's not controversial. Or how about, let's say, something like a little Pegasus constellation. Well, that's not controversial. And I agree with you. That's not. Sorry, guys. The camera's glitching here. Not too sure why. So that's not controversial. But when you look at it as a whole, you'll start seeing things that are. I mean, that should kind of stand out, hopefully, as controversial. Got some stuff down here. Controversial. And then you start realizing with the eagles and this little jerk up here. This is Nazi memorabilia. And I don't like using the word memorabilia myself. That is a common term used, and I prefer to call them relics because to me they're historical, and that's why I collect them. I don't collect them for status or value or anything like that. That to me is secondary to what these are. And you'll say, well, why even collect them at all? You know, it's such a nasty part of history. It's just pure evil. And you're 100% right. These are not items I want on display. I do not put them on display. They are in a case so I can see them when I do take them out. But this is not something I hang on my wall. I don't like the swastika. I don't like looking at the swastika. I'm sure there are some people out there that do. And to you, I say, grow up. You know, learn your history, and hopefully that's what this will do for some people, especially the next generation. You know, my step-grandfather, unfortunately, was Hitler Youth. He was forced to join at 14. He was taken away from his family, and by the time he was 17, it was 1945, and they sent him to Russia, where he said he couldn't, in his own words, said he never fired the rifle. He couldn't fire at somebody, and I believe him. He was a weird little guy. I can tell you a million stories about him. So I'm going to start on the side here. These are what are called TINES in the collecting market. So these would have been handed at political rallies, and there's quite a lot of them. And they have very similar attributes, symbolism that you might recognize today. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit closer, and we'll go over some of them. This is a 1934. So very early in the Nazi Party, NASDAP. And you can see it's a worker symbol, and oddly enough, they look very similar, don't they? We've seen the hammer and the sickle before. So to say that Nazis weren't fascist is just a straight up lie. And then you have a lot of classical symbolism. This isn't necessarily a tinny. I'll get onto what some of these other ones are. But we'll go down a little bit more on the tinnies. So you can see there's quite a few more tinnies down here. These ones are a little bit rougher shape, but they all are 1937 and so forth. So these are pre-war tinnies and the rise of the Nazi Party. Does this teach us a lot? Not really. I mean, it does tell us who Hitler was marketing towards, and I think that's a good reminder that these political leaders, these fascists, will go for the most common denominator, which is the working class people, and rely on I don't want to say a lack of education, but a lack of awareness of political manipulation and maneuvering. So keep that in mind, everybody. I don't want to draw direct parallels to what's going on in the world, but I probably will, and I apologize if I'm controversial. I am Canadian, and we have a very different kind of view of history and the way things work. So moving on, you're going to see a lot of these little weird things here. These little plastic pins, stuff like that. So what are these? It has to do with... move that down a little more. It has to do with this little guy here. A little hard to tell, but you can see he's holding something, and there's a little symbol on it as well. That's Hitler Youth. So these pins came apart from the Winter Help program, was what it was called. And the Winter Help program was very similar to a lot of our ribbons, yellow, like the poppies and the lilies for cancer awareness. It sounds horrible to equate them that way, but essentially it was fundraising for getting poor families through the harder times in winter in Germany. Because keep in mind, it wasn't just the war that was causing a lot of problems in Germany. It was the post-war and the Depression. So all these 1930s, I think anybody who has a grandmother or grandfather who grew up in the 30s can tell you stories about the Depression and starvation. But there's a very sinister side to all these as well. And the sinister side, let's see if I can move this camera around. The sinister side comes into something like this here. These are, I think, the most interesting, but also the most, they go all the way up, actually. There's quite a few of them. So these, to me, are the most sinister aspects of this program. What these are, if you flip them over, it's very hard to read, but on the back there's a little bit of information in German. And what it's doing is it's telling you the history of the swastika. And almost all these imagery that they use for the swastika are, well, not almost, all of them are pre-Nazi. And a lot of them aren't even from Europe. They're from Asia. And it was the idea that the German people were the founders of the world and society, and had a right to take everything back. That's the reason for conquering the world. And you get little things like these books here and here. These are for teaching you German culture, songs, stories, and so forth like that. And then you get the classic straight up propaganda. I mean, here's Hitler launching a ship, probably the Bismarck or the Tirpitz. Then you have him, I don't know what he's doing there. I think he's donating to the Winter Help, actually. There's a little bucket in his hand there. And then there's, you know, the classic hero Hitler, right? Hero Hitler. So who came up with this idea? That's where it gets even more sinister, because it seems kind of almost, I don't want to say innocuous, but a lot of them seem innocuous. You know, the red crosses and, you know, WHW there, right there. This was come up by the SS. It was a way to ensure people understood the culture of Germany and elevated it up and informed people of what was the Germans' right, what they were entitled to. So just bullshit propaganda to say that I don't agree with reproduction, simply because the reproductions don't have any historical value, and to me all they represent is hate. Is there a place for reproductions in the world? Yes, and I'll show you a gray area of what I mean by yes. So this guy here, well, how should I show him? Probably this way. Like, this is the most vile of all symbols in the German military. This is the Toberkoffen, the death head. These were the guys that were the SS, the true zealots, the true evil mothers. And they were in charge of the death camps and stuff like that. So why do I have this? Is this real, is the question. The answer is yes and no. What was common during World War II would be you bring back souvenirs, and most soldiers aren't going to pack a whole hat in their bag, simply because it probably wouldn't fit. Maybe they didn't even find the hat. Maybe they just found these pins by themselves. A lot of the time, especially SS, they were tossing their uniforms left, right, and center because they know they were going to be nailed for it. So what I have here is original pins on a reproduction hat. And the reason why I say reproductions do have a bit of a place, because it puts context to the medals. It's not just simply left on a tray like this with no real understanding of
one
its
aspect I also
context,
want
how
to
they're
address
handled, how
about
they were
collecting is the public perception and what you do with these items. A good example would be somebody like Jesse James, not the smartest guy on earth, and I don't even know if you would argue that, but there's people like him that don't think and will put something like this hat on. I'll show you some photos of Jesse James. He was dating a stripper at the time, and I don't know, I guess he just thought it was funny or something. Sorry, so you can fix that camera a bit. It's not funny. They're not props, they're not costumes. So treat them with respect. And as for people who want to use this against you, just keep in mind, it's common. People will take stuff out of context, especially if it's a power struggle. That's going to be it for today. It's not the most uplifting, but I hope you guys learned a little bit something. And I will say these collections, the nice part about them too when it comes to collecting anything from World War II Germany, there's a lot of fakes out there. Beyond reproductions, people will, obviously if you can make money off it, they'll fake it. These are affordable. You can get them fairly easily online. You can get them at almost every single military you go. Sorry guys, that damn camera's flickering again. They're affordable, they're too cheap to fake, so if you want to collect something with real historical content, it's a nice beginning point. You don't need to overinvest, you can buy them a little bit at a time. Usually you'll find them in lots. And I'm not going to say have fun, but appreciate your history and do your best to understand it and convey its messages to the next generation. Alright guys, thank you everybody. I do hope you learned something and possibly even enjoyed this. And stay safe out there and keep on collecting, and I will see you in the next video. Like and subscribe.